I would like to welcome back Renée Fleming and Christopher Bailey and Kristin Sakoda and our presenters from the 5 district partnerships. Thank you very much.
So this is the most enriching day. I feel like the breadth of my understanding about what's available to people and to communities has greatly expanded. And first of all, I want to thank Chris Bailey for just being here, for coming from Geneva to support us in this endeavor. Thank you. And of course, all of the organizers who put this incredibly enriching day together. I want to start with this. I was sparked by the idea of referencing arts and culture that Tomas did, and arts and culture in one breath. And it made me sort of begin to want to question my own history with arts, because I'm a performing artist who's been in the world of Western classical music, which is a European art form. So any way you look at it, it comes from Europe for the most part. We're now doing a lot of new work, which is more relevant to us now, but still the underpinnings are that. But I wonder if you could speak to the incredible variety of offerings in LA County and what the culture part of that means in the city and means to you. And anybody just speak up.
Well, first of all, I want to tell you that in 1972, I was given a class assignment, which was to go see an opera, and I'd never seen one before. And it was a pain in the ass because it was on Wednesday, and I had a card game, but I had to have it done by my class ending on Friday, so I went ahead and I drove in from Long Beach State. I got here with $5 in my pocket, and I bought a student ticket to go see a play, and it turned out to be Marilyn Niska.
Oh.
In Traviata. I mean, it was life-changing. Huh. And I have been an acolyte of opera ever since. So I think that the idea that art is universal is true, absolutely. I think the idea is that in Los Angeles County, we have what? How many different communities and cultures and languages do we speak in LA?
Over 200.
Okay, so we have over 200 forms of artistic and cultural expression, and even ethnicities which are subcultured in that. We are the great melting pot of art and culture in the world. We are. We have more theater than New York. We have more music than in Berlin or Paris. Right here in LA, right here, even with COVID. And I think that is something that we have to treasure and embrace. We've got to recognize the healing and enrichment value of arts and culture in all forms. So please make sure you know that I was not knocking Eurocentric. I'm looking at that as a tradition, but thank God for Eurocentric because I've got Klimt in my house. So I also just want to be part of that community that says, well, we got Frida Kahlo. Would you like to share her? Here, I got some Day of the Dead for you. Let me have some of this banjo music, and I'm going to trade you for this Chicano art street light, okay? And let's just keep doing that, because that's how we enrich and embolden each other.
Thank you, yes. It's great.
And I'll add to that, thank you so much, Tomas. I think, and it's interesting you posing the question, because when we became the Department of Arts and Culture, as you all may know, we have nearly 75 years of the LA County Arts Commission, which is an incredible commission of 15 individuals appointed by the Board of Supervisors. Essentially, access to the arts was the name of the game from the beginning, funding different symphonies and performances all the way since the 40s. Once I arrived as directors, the board was considering creating a department. And so we actually went through a whole transition. They made a historic decision and by ordinance created the first ever Department of Arts and Culture and then reappointed me to be the director. That's all the backdrop to the story, which is when I was on the dais, this is back in person, and the board members are sitting there. It was actually Supervisor Katherine Barger, who in the conversation when they were choosing to create LA County's first ever Department of Arts and Culture said, and I think, and it was going to be my job to help propose the name, I think the word culture should be in it. And so we took that and we became the Department of Arts and Culture. And we even now, it's been a couple of years, we still do some important navel gazing about what does that mean for us? How does that impact what we want to do to take that broader lens. And I know that there's been some incredible scholars and colleagues out there who've essentially defined culture very broadly as our ways of being that bind us. So the ways we cook, the way we engage, the way we socialize. So art is really one of the highest forms of cultural expression. So artistic and cultural expression is within all of our culture. And so that's where it gets, I think, really interesting when we're talking about it in the context of the conversation today. Because a lot of what we do is kind of arts-led, right? We're going to really talk about the arts, but we heard a lot of other things that were broader that people said contributed to their well-being or, health and wellness in communities, cooking. So not only culinary arts, but just the act of cooking and the culture that you're bringing when you're sharing the recipes from your grandmother or your Korean neighborhood and the act of coming together. And so I think that actually is a really interesting conversation. How do we make sure we widen the aperture to include cultural elements, even when they may fall out of the traditional notion of fine arts? And then I think the second piece that Tomas is bringing up is really about cultural equity, which for me is not about tearing down any art form, right? And I too, I started ballet, right, at age 4, so we know where that came from. But it's about how do we proactively address the fact that in our whole country for so many years and decades, art forms and cultural forms, and often those that were viewed as more low income or people of color specific forms, were underfunded, were under-recognized, were not excellent, and all of those things. And so we have to be proactive if we're going to actually change the name of the game on that. So, okay, that's my soapbox on arts and culture, but fabulous question.
Well, and looking at what you're doing, too, I think identity is under that umbrella of culture, isn't it?
Yes.
And how important it is for people to feel like they belong. And certainly, I think that's clear. I have questions. I have the iPad with the questions from all of you. So let me start with one from Joy. How can independent artists, healing artists, and curators not part of an organization apply for community arts funding, especially for using the arts to address healing justice and housing justice? That's a great question. Whoever knows how to answer that question, please speak up.
Kristin Sakoda.
Everyone's like you. It sounds like she's interested in hearing about opportunities for individual artists, curators, creatives, who maybe are not attached to a specific nonprofit organization. So a lot of what we fund specifically at our department is for nonprofits or their partners, but not everything. We also do have opportunities to be commissioned. And so LA County Department of Arts and Culture, we have a civic art practice, and you should get on our list, or any of your friends should get on our list, so that you can get opportunities, because we really do want to also expand the field of public art. Who gets commissions? What kind of programs do we do? What kind of new approaches do we have? We also are placing artists in residence, as I shared this morning, which is a whole nother opportunity. And we have a pre-qualified list, like rosters, of different kinds of consultants. Curators, project managers, et cetera. So I know those are avenues that would be on our website. But we are also not the only game in town. There are absolutely other funders in philanthropy that fund individual artists, and depending on where you live in LA County, there are some other municipal art agencies. So the city of LA has a Department of Cultural Affairs, and they have some programs that fund individual artists or musicians, and they have a gallery program. And then there are a few other local arts agencies from different cities like Pasadena, Santa Monica, Long Beach Arts Council, I think was here today, Santa Clarita, and a few others, so that if you're located there, they may have additional opportunities for you.
Is there a list of foundations available to individuals?
That's actually interesting. You know, on our website, we definitely would have a list of the municipal art agencies. I don't know if we have a list of the foundations. At one point, we compiled one specifically around COVID because of all the relief grants. But that's a good idea. Definitely, there could be somebody looking. The Center for Cultural Innovation is also amazing, CCI, and they have a lot of resources. You could check their website as well.
The Grantsmanship Center downtown is still a great resource. It's a library. You got to go in, you got to do the homework, you got to do the research, but it's all there for free. But it requires going there, signing up, doing the research, learning how to work those matrices. It's a little bit like a dating game, or like no, I'm sorry, I'm dating myself. It's a little bit like, online dating matchups. It's about finding the right profile and algorithm so that what you want to do, who you are, and what are your skill set is going to match up with the right foundation or grant project. It may or may not work all the time. You might want to consider also aligning yourself with an organization for a particular project because it fortifies your project by 75%. It is much easier to get a grant if you are an associate artist than if you are on your own. That's just a practical thing from a grant writer. Okay, and I know it means that you have to kind of modify a little bit here and there. It's part of the deal.
From Ellen, Hollywood Fringe Festival, many independent cultural workers and artists go without proper access to health care. How can the arts sector advocate for this issue, both locally and nationally?
I'd be happy to jump in on this one. So there's a bill that's being considered in the state of California called SB 1116. Right now it's going through committees. Actually, it just got out of a committee today. And it is, I forget the name of it, it's one of these long names, like the Equitable Payroll Act of the state of California. The point of it is making sure that they're setting aside some money for nonprofit organizations, particularly those under $2 million. The purpose of it would be to reimburse small nonprofits for payroll, insurance, all sorts of things like that. And that could be something that really inspires a lot of organizations to start investing in insurance. But as you well know, so few places want to pay for that type of thing. Very few grantors are like, hey, we would love to pay for your administrative staff at all, let alone insurance. But it's a life changer, and it's also a quality of the arts changer, because if you can, so many people stay out of the arts because they think that there's no security in it, particularly BIPOC artists. It's easy to do volunteer theater if you come from privilege, and it is much harder if you don't. And so this is something that could really help the equity in the arts, both in insurance and in pay. So it's called SB 1116. If you Google that, there are a few websites where you can write to your representatives in support of it if you're interested.
So this is Samantha, USC. All of your organizations have wonderful accessible programming for underprivileged and underrepresented groups. How do you decide on the types of programs you offer? I'm interested in the role of your board of directors and how much you consider your grant funding audiences and or your communities. Do you have thoughts about that? Helen, you're doing wonderful work everywhere.
Yeah, that's a big question. What was the first part again?
How do you decide on the types of programs you offer?
Yeah, okay, so we are vendored through Department of Developmental Services, and unique to California, there are 21 regional centers up and down the state of California, and so all of our service users can have access to our services free of charge because the state of California purchases their services. And so we have a program design, and in that program design we delineate what kind of individuals we can take based on our expertise and the type of employees that we have that can support certain abilities and support systems that are needed. Now, beyond the day program, where we have very specific people that support our individuals, but outside of that in the community, Christy, I mean, it's open to any and all individuals. All of our community programs, we don't turn people away. Anyone can participate, and those are typically grant funded, and so they're free to individuals in the community to access those. So it really levels the playing field to allow everyone to have access to the arts. And how we decide on those, sometimes it's a trend, but I think somebody earlier mentioned something about it comes from the community. They reach out to us and say, hey, we want a zines workshop, or this is, or hey, we would like improv, or whatever it might be. And so from that, those services are birthed and developed. We answer the call of our community.
So I wondered if we had a great zine class yesterday with James. Was that his idea, or was somebody who walked in one day just said, are you making zines?
So he's an artist. He's a working artist as well, and he belongs to a zine community.
Do you all know what zines are? Because I had never heard of it before. So we made little tiny magazines that you can self-publish, right? Yeah. It was so much fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
Katherine, what's the role of your board?
I want to talk about the evolving needs of our organization, really, because similar to Helen,
we listen to the community, and, I had David read the mission statement because it says we serve the evolving needs of our community, and the community really morphs over time. So one of the points I wanted to address is we're now serving elders in our community. The elders in our community, both in the Latinx community and in the AAPI community, are starting to age. So this is a brand new community for us. There are very little services for them. How do we know this? Because I got a call that says, my mother has Alzheimer's. I need a support group in Korean. Where can I go? Or there's a lot of homeless Korean elders now, so we're starting to see that, and we're starting to realize that they need economic services in language, right? So another thing that I noticed, our youth services program came and said, we have 12 Mongolian kids, right? So suddenly we have this need for Mongolian language support, because I have noticed that there is, and I found out there's 3,000 Mongolians in Koreatown. And so this is a new community that we're just starting to see. So like any immigrant community, people initially think of Koreatown as Korean, but then it's Mexican, and then it's Central American, and now it's Bengali, and now there's a Mongolian community. And so our organization is really there to serve the community. So we're finding out who's there. We see this through the kids, who are coming through the education programs, and then we're addressing first the children. Then we start branching out into the family, and we realize the family needs tax services, or the family needs mental health services, or their older children are having substance abuse issues. So this is how things come about. When marijuana was legalized, we had to do a whole education program around marijuana, vaping, CBD, these are things that our parents didn't know anything about. What is a vape, right? So it's all things that we're seeing come to us through what's happening in our environment.
That's amazing, and I hope your people are stepping up and supporting you, because that's of the need and the incredible diversity in Koreatown. So this is another reason why we should have these gatherings at least once a year, because you can support each other. And that's something that I found. Chris Bailey, you have done this work around the world. And he started really working on using his theater skills for AIDS, really outreach and education in sub-Saharan Africa and all over. Can you just say something about what you've heard today and what your thinking is now about Los Angeles and this extraordinary arts community?
Well, I don't know Los Angeles very well. This is only the third time I've been here. And so I'm just impressed at the variety of the place. I'm looking forward to coming to Koreatown on Friday and seeing for myself.
Wonderful.
But for instance, I didn't know that there was also 40% Latin. For me, there's this wonderful opposition wherever I go in the world. I listen to community groups, and that's much of my job, is to actually just go and listen and support and learn and bring it back. But to hold two opposites in your head at once, to celebrate the variety and the unique identities of all different groups. And culture basically is a shared set of stories. I mean, that's really what it is. And then at the same time, the essential commonality of it all. I remember when I was doing work in China, and I was invited into a family home, and just the rice wine got passed around, and people were laughing and joking, and there was the crazy uncle with the political opinions, and it was any family in the world, and the same thing in Kenya, the same thing in Lima. It's just, the stories are different, but the emotions are always the same. And I think that's something that is of huge value. I wish everyone could be in a home in another country and experience that. I think a lot of the problems of the world would disappear.
So we're going to have our drumming circle in a few minutes. I just want to end on the Los Angeles Opera, because the project that you're doing at UCLA, Ernie, you're representing that now, right? is music to my heart. And there's a researcher who's in the middle of a 5-year study funded by the NIH named Jacqueline Kolinsky, who's at the University of Wisconsin, who is actually, she has no art in her background whatsoever. I never believe her because I always think she must have been an actress at some point. But she is actually studying the power of singing to improve markers and health in patients with cardiac failure. It's unbelievable the success she's having, because in that population, which is older, sedentary, and the doctors can say till they're blue in the face, you need to be exercising, etc., it's not going to happen. But they'll sing for 30 minutes 3 times a week or 5 times a week, and the markers improve. Everything improves. So it's amazing how we can contribute, and we haven't even thought of it yet. It seemed outlandish to me. I couldn't believe that it would work. I just want to say thank you to you for collaborating with the LA Opera. And because you are actually the clinical manager, can you just say a word about what you've seen?
When I first heard about this collaboration, I thought, well, patients going to sing? So I'm the scientist here. I didn't think that was going to work. Well, when you think about during the COVID, it came out of a need that we didn't know what and how to treat these patients. But it's a respiratory illness, and pulmonary rehab is geared to help people with respiratory conditions. So we were thinking, what are we going to do? We can't have people expelling air in our gym. Everybody has to wear a mask. And how is this going to work? And so when I met with Rondi and then Michelle and Nani, and they started putting this together, it started making sense, because in a pulmonary rehab setting, breathing is vital to their rehabilitation. And this is exponentially better because they can do it at home, and trained singers are actually teaching them not just breathing, but posture, mindfulness, and so it fits within UCLA's integrated medicine concept. And so when we can resume normality in our clinic, this has taught me how important breathing exercises are, but also how to make it fun, and this is where the singing comes in. And I've been watching it as I'm the observer, making sure everybody's okay. Everybody has fun, and I've learned so much that I'm taking back to our practice. So we will incorporate the arts into this and in cardiac rehab, because this will help the cardiac patients relax, as breathing is a form of relaxation. And so it is very powerful, and they're awesome at what they do.
Well, let's share what we learn and what we know. I'm working with Johns Hopkins now to develop possibly technology for early detection in lung disorders, and I had no idea how widespread lung issues are and breathing issues are. So thank you all. Let's do our wonderful, are you going to lead us? Helen, you're going to lead us in our drumming circle? I'm so grateful to you for coming today. Thank you all.